My name's Jennifer Wilson. I'm a director of a small Sydney company, getting bigger, called the Project Factory, and I sit on the board of the Digital Sydney Advisory Committee. And this session really is about startups, and it's interesting because I've got lots of views about startups and lots of questions about startups, like when does a startup become a business? And is a good idea a startup, or is a company a startup, and what's the difference? And it's interesting because in the discussions with people earlier on tonight about what is a startup, a business, it was suggested to me that as long as the founder is still the CEO, it's a startup. So that kind of makes Facebook a startup, and Google has kind of gone back to being a startup. Then somebody said to me, maybe it's when they're profitable. So that would say that LinkedIn is still a startup. And when I was looking at something in San Francisco about a benefit to startups, they mentioned that tiny little company called Zynga. So far I can't really tell when a startup becomes a business, but I kind of work for a business. We were a startup probably about 3 or 4 years ago. We're a digital media production company that works mainly with TV and film people in working how to tell stories across the digital spectrum. And we are now in 2 countries, and we have 13 whole people. And we're kind of happy with the way that we're going, and we like being as small as we are, and we're looking forward to being 65 one day. And that was people, not age, but we're heading that way as well. Tonight on the stage with me, I've got Peter Davidson and Mike Casey from Fishburners. I've got Olga Titarenko from Startup Weekend. I've got Ilya Bizanes from Silicon Beach and Startup Bus, and I've got Sonia Sharma from Maddox. And we're really going to be having a look at that spectrum of startups, from where do you go when you've got an idea and need some support from people around you? How do you get that first idea? When that idea gets a little bit bigger, what can you do with it then? And when you get to that stage of a big idea and you've got a home, what are the legal ramifications that you need to understand about where your business is? And so starting on that basis of this little journey that we're going to go through, I'm going to pass over to Mike and Peter from Fishburners to tell us the Fishburners story.
Cool. Thanks, Jen. Roll slide.
Roll slide. There we are. You're up.
Sweet as. Cool.
Good.
Great. It's awesome to be able to present here today and tell you guys, I guess, a little bit about Fishburners, which is a project that Peter and I have been passionately working on for quite a while now, and as of 6 weeks ago, we launched it for the first time. Essentially, in a nutshell, Fishburners is a 60-seat open or shared office environment that is filled with about 35 different companies, ranging from sort of one founder right through to, I think the largest company has 5 founders in them. And essentially the whole reason that Fishburners came about was my strong will and sort of, I guess, appreciation for the startup community that has happened in Sydney, and I guess so far what has helped me to basically start the startup that that I run today. So it's your presentation, Peter. So I'll just go gung ho. So essentially, the way Fishburners came about is that I run a company called Grad Connection, and Grad Connection is essentially a job board for university students, and we've always been pretty poor. So I guess the one thing that we're going to be talking about is how I've come from the innovative startup side, and Peter has come from the opposite side, and the investment side, and we've both come together to create Fishburners. But essentially, Fishburners, essentially what happened with Grad Connection is that we created a shared office environment. Now, the essential reason behind that was that we were subleasing off another company, and essentially this company got bought out, and we were left with a lease that we needed to maintain and run or move out. And we were in the horrible situation where we couldn't afford to move anywhere because we still didn't really have much money, and we also couldn't afford to take over the lease that this other company was giving away. And so essentially, it was really simple. We decided that we would go to IKEA and spend $2,000 on desks and start renting those desks out. And it was a really, really simple equation. It was take the total rent per month and divide it by 15 desks, and we worked out that about $250 per month per desk was what we could settle on and actually break even. And what was the most amazing thing is we thought this was going to be a reasonable struggle to actually convince people to come hang out with us, and it actually wasn't. And through the Silicon Beach community, which I'm sure Ilya will be talking about later on, we actually managed to promote and get 15 desks filled up at $250 per desk per month. within about a week of us actually pushing it out for the first time. And that was really awesome. And of course, it covered our rent, which was the main goal at the time. But the interesting thing that happened from there is what happened is we ended up with 5 startups working really, really closely together, sharing ideas, sharing creativity, often counselling each other, encouraging each other, getting through the tough times and celebrating the good times. And eventually, after about 6 or 7 weeks, we actually sort of, informally named this little venture Project Hollywood. With the whole idea, if any of you have ever read a book called The Game before, it was pretty much a whole bunch of blokes sitting together like non-stop all of the time, and then going out and partying together as well. And essentially, it was awesome, and I think I owe a lot of the success that we've now had in our startup to the other startups that I guess existed with us in this co-working environment. And eventually we got to the stage where we got into a bit more of a stable position. In fact, all 5 companies were cash flow positive, and I was the main driver behind deciding that I wanted to expand this environment and expand it big. And so essentially the one problem that I had is that Grad Connection couldn't really afford or didn't want to take on the risk of maybe taking out a $150,000 lease on a place that could hold about 60 people. So I went and talked to a large number of corporates and had quite a few discussions with state government to talk about how it is that I could expand and create Fishburners for the first time. Create the 60-seat environment. And everybody that I talked to, although a lot of them thought it was a good idea, they didn't really understand or appreciate the value, which was this environment where you could nurture and develop creativity here in Sydney within the entrepreneurial community. And thankfully, actually, again through Silicon Beach, I met Peter. And I was speaking to him very passionately about this idea that I had where I wanted to, build and expand on Project Hollywood, and managed to sucker him in to helping me out, which was awesome. So essentially, long story short, Peter agreed that he would be the private funder who personally guaranteed the lease on the new place that we got. And we launched Fishburners. So Fishburners is essentially, cheers, man. So Fishburners is an Ultimo, and essentially what we do is we get startups who are interested to apply, and what we do is we go through a screening process and basically make sure that everybody who moves in is who we think is going to be a good fit to the community. Now, that's not something that, it's not necessarily based on liking a particular person, but it's whether they've got a company or a set of skills that might complement some of the other people in our community, or it might be, that they just aren't competing with any of the other startups that are in the place already. And so far, it's been really, really good. It's about 6 weeks old, so it's still really young, but we've now rented out all 60 desks at $250 per desk. So the same model that we had before, and we've just had a lot of positive feedback so far from the people that have already been in there. Our goals from here are really interesting because essentially within, I think, a couple of months we're going to have stabilised what I think is a really good system for a co-working environment in Sydney, and we've got a line of people that is quite long of people that we would like to get into our community but just don't have the space anymore. So our goal over the next few months is to figure out how it is that we can expand Fishburners even further, whether it's taking over the floor below us, or potentially expanding to another area of Sydney, or potentially expanding again to another city within Australia, where we can offer obviously office environments to those people who are travelling for business. And unfortunately, to do that, we're going to have to be in a position where we look beyond, I guess originally Grad Connection and beyond Peter. And see if we can find a way of, really building and fostering, I think, a really awesome co-op working environment. And I'm getting nudged on the knee now because I think my 5 minutes is up.